During an 11-year span of the family feud, more than a dozen family members from each side died in the controversy. You've probably all despised someone at least one time in your life, but have you ever heard of the Hatfield and McCoy family feud of the late 1800s? They took their hatred for one another to a whole new level. Many polls agreed that the Hatfield and McCoy feud is the most famous feud in America's history. I am going to discuss where and when the feud started, why the feud occurred, and some famous battles and confrontations that fueled the hatred between these families. The feud took place many years ago. The West was just starting to get settled. The feud began between the Hatfields and McCoys at the end of the Civil War. The first confrontation between these families was in 1863. According to the book, The Hatfields and McCoys, written by Otis Rice, the family, led by Randolph McCoy, resided on the eastern edge of Kentucky, near the town of Tug Fork. The Hatfields, led by William Anderson Hatfield, lived in the area right across the Tug Fork town of West Virginia. This bloody feud lasted from 1863 until 1891, when a peace treaty was finally signed between the two families. The feud began because of a number of different confrontations and differences. In Norma Lugar's editorial entitled The Hatfield and McCoy Feud, the first known dispute between the Hatfield and McCoys was in 1963, when Randolph McCoy's brother, Asa, was brutally murdered for being a soldier for the Union. The prime suspects were the Hatfields, because they were Confederates, but no suspects were ever brought to trial. The next confrontation was 13 years later over the ownership of a hog. Randolph McCoy took Floyd Hatfield to court over a hog that he thought was his, but the court settled in favor of Floyd. The breaking point was in 1882, at a Kentucky election day, when William Hatfield's brother Ellison was stabbed 27 times and shot once by 3 of Randolph McCoy's sons. Soon after the quarrel, Ellison died, and the Hatfield clan took the 3 McCoy men out into the woods and shot them to death. From there, things turned very ugly and out of control. As noted by Altina Waller in her publication entitled The Hatfield and McCoy Feud, the feud was at its highest point during the 1888 New Year's Eve massacre. A group of Hatfields surrounded Randolph McCoy's cabin and opened fire on the family inside. Randolph escaped, but the Hatfields managed to kill one of his daughters and another son. The Battle of Grapevine ensued a few months after the massacre. When the battle was over, a few Hatfields were taken into custody and tried for their part in the massacre. 3 of them got life in prison, and the 4th was sentenced to death by hanging. Many of the Hatfields had bounties for their part in the murders. Of the McCoy men, and the only man to ever successfully capture a Hatfield was a man by the name of Frank Phillips. The feud eventually died down after Ellison Mounts was hanged for the murder of Randolph McCoy's daughter Alifair during the New Year's Night massacre. The Hatfields and McCoys agreed to a truce in 1891. They unintentionally became infamous for their feud and are still recognized today as the most famous feud in American history. Now you can see how badly things can get out of hand if you don't settle your disputes with others in a reasonable way. The Hatfield and McCoys' immense family pride, combined with some intense hillbilly rage, led to bloodshed and disarray for each family. In 2003, descendants from the Hatfield and McCoy family came together and signed a peace treaty. Many think it was to demonstrate how people can put aside their differences and come together for the greater good, because this treaty was signed soon after the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Centers.